Hey guys, what's up? Thanks for tuning in again to A Matter of Life and Maiden, the podcast of the Beast. I'm Joe Labriola.
I'm Matt Wagner.
And on today's episode, we kind of just want to talk about the albums. And we thought we are just going to go chronologically with this, so we're starting off with Iron Maiden. We're going to talk about the 1998 remastered release versus the original release in 1988 because that is pretty much the definitive edition of the album, in our opinion. Because Sanctuary's on there. We like Sanctuary. We think it's a good song, so we're going to include it. We're pretty much just going to go in order here talking about the songs and what they mean to us. Just some stuff about, how the album's produced, how listenable is it. I mean, if you can listen to the album from beginning to end. And then again, we're going to talk about the artwork. That includes not only the sleeve of the album, but also supporting materials from singles and, some stuff on tour too, which the first album really didn't have a lot of that stuff, but we're going to touch on it anyway. And then talk about the subject matter and what we think the songs are about, and how they influenced us and how good they are, really. And then we're gonna rate the album at the end on a scale of 1 to 10. First, obviously, the first song on the album is Prowler. For me, I like Prowler a lot. I think it's a great song.
Hey Joe, tell us what Prowler is about.
Well, it's pretty self-explanatory, right?
Really diving deep there. Give us some analysis.
Yeah, diving in deep. It's about somebody who's stalking somebody, really. Hiding in the bushes, so on and so forth. Some of the lyrics in the song. Will you see me crawling through the bushes when it all comes by? What you see, girl? Got some Deano. Another thing about the album, Deano. Deano, the first singer from Maiden, who was, able to record an album with Maiden. Really good vocals on this. I like Paul. Some people don't like Paul. My opinion, straight up right now, Bruce Dickinson, best vocalist for Iron Maiden of all time. But for these albums and their studio release and where they were at the time, I think Paul's a good fit. I do like Paul a lot. I do like his style. Really reminds me of kind of like this. I know Danzig and stuff came after, but he has that really kind of like Glenn Danzig-y, kind of like Elvis Presley, kind of like this raunchiness to his voice, which is kind of, really different from Bruce. But
yeah, when I picture like Paul in my head, he's wearing a leather jacket. It's kind of like it encapsulates the feeling of Prowler and a lot of those songs off the original album. Yeah. Sanctuary, it's just like this kind of like Hell's Angel biker kind of feel.
Yeah.
You like Paul more than I do. I've never been a huge fan of Paul, but like to me, Bruce is obviously like the voice of Maiden and will always be the voice of Maiden.
Agreed.
But Paul was great for those first two albums and what Steve was really trying to do. Yeah. I mean, like you were talking about Prowler. Prowler to me is like one of the most unique Iron Maiden songs. There's nothing like Prowler in the whole catalog. I don't know what Steve was thinking about when he wrote that or what was going on in his head, but he had this idea of some pervert going around flashing himself. It's kind of no other song like it, no other subject matter like it in the Maiden catalog. Personally, though, I love the guitars in it. I love the sound. I love that wah on the guitar. It's great sound. Paul does a great job with the song. It's a great opener to the album, and it's the introduction to Maiden, the first song they put out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and wasn't that? Now that we're talking about that, when they recorded this album, wasn't that the one song that like? When they went to record it, it was on the charts like over and over again. People were like, "What is this song? What is this song?" Remember that? In the early days, when they're talking about like some of the interviews,
yeah,
they said Prowler was like, "Oh my god, what is this song?" The guy played it right for them. I can't remember his name or recall it, but it like pretty much propelled them like to get some radio play.
There was nothing else around that sounded like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very like it was kind of like an edgy song for the time period.
Mm-hmm.
Had a very unique sound. Like I said, it's one of the most unique songs in their whole catalog. I love the song personally. I really like the re-release of it, and was it Prowler '88 when they did it as a B-side to
I believe so, yeah.
One of the singles off of Seventh Son. I don't remember which one it was, but I love that too with Bruce version of it. And they also played it during the early days tour. Mm-hmm. They played Prowler, which was a tour we missed out on, unfortunately, and we'll probably never hear the song live, but I thought it sounded great too on that tour.
Yeah, I think all in all, it's a great opener, great song. I agree with you on pretty much every point you said. I don't have any disagreements at all. I think I'm with you 100% on that. What about Sanctuary? I'm talking about Sanctuary.
Sanctuary is another one that kind of fit Paul's personality. It's very leather jacket, Hell's Angel kind of feel. He's put his personality on the band like later on Bruce would. I like Sanctuary. It's a great song. They played at Rock in Rio too. It's a great. It actually makes a great closer too. A point about all these songs too is that they all had their own personality. They all could stand alone on their own. And you can't say that about every song that would come later on. But there was something special about the songs off the first Iron Maiden album. And that I think, I'm trying to think of another band that had a better debut album than Iron Maiden. And I can't think of one.
Yeah, I agree. I think, like you said, I think every song here has a life of its own. I think that...
there's something special about it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, as we're going down this list, though, I still think, I know we're on the second song, but I think Prowler is a little bit better than Sanctuary. I think that's for me, anyway. That's my kind of, like, I might just be biased because it's the opener, and, the rest of the album's kind of growing on you, but in terms of just, lyrics and guitar sound and all that stuff, I like Prowler a little bit better than Sanctuary, but they're both solid, they're both unique, they're both fantastic, so.
Yeah, like I was saying about all these songs having their own personality, is that the band didn't really have a sound or direction yet. They were still trying to figure everything out. And Steve was exploring the sounds. They were all really, really young still. And each song's kind of its own adventure. There's no set mood to the album. It was just kind of like, here's Prowler, here's Sanctuary, here's Remember Tomorrow. They all kind of had their own, they were encapsulated in their own universe.
Yeah, I kind of want to touch on that too, what you said. Remember Tomorrow, that's the next song on the album. That song for me, in particular, I mean, let's just break down and say it here. Phantom of the Opera is the best song on the album. I mean, there is no comparison. But Remember Tomorrow is my second favorite song on the entire album. I think that it's just especially with Bruce. I mean, when Bruce does it, it's not the album version, I know, but when he has the audition tape and they're playing Remember Tomorrow, and he goes ah with the guitar. I mean, that's like ridiculous. But
yeah, like you can make a case that Paul sung Prowler better, and you can make a case that Paul's better with Sanctuary. I don't think that anybody out there can make a case that Paul sang Remember Tomorrow better than Bruce. Bruce owns that song.
Yeah, and it's become one of my favorite songs Iron Maiden's ever done. I mean, I like the illusion when he talks about, the eye in the sky flickers above us or whatever. I mean, that's like, that reminds me, because I'm a huge Tolkien fan too. I love that kind of stuff, and that reminds me of Sauron. That reminds me of, the Barad-dûr Tower and stuff. It might not even have any kind of, relation to that whatsoever. But when I listen to it, that's what I think of when I hear that song. And I just think it's incredible. I love the song. I like I said, that's my second favorite song on the album.
Yeah, like looking at the songs, it's probably it's hard to argue that it's not the second best or third best song at least on the album. And to me, it's another one of those songs that it's hard to think of another song in the catalog that sounds like Remember Tomorrow. Like when I hear it, I don't know. Like you think of like you were saying, like Tolkien. Like I always think of something like Out of the Twilight Zone or something. There's some sort of that kind of, I don't know what the word is for it, just this unsettling, creepy vibe to it. I don't know, like it's a really awesome song in its own right. As like I think every song on this album's awesome, personally.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think I appreciate that that insight into it as something from the Twilight Zone, because if you know the band and you know Steve and you know Paul and those guys and what Steve reads, and I know we're kind of jumping ahead here a little bit, but I mean, they have a song called Twilight Zone on Killers. They have, the Number of the Beast stuff where he's all about the occult. So I think that makes a lot of sense. It's just not something that I would think of personally, but I think you're right. I think there is some kind of truth to that. But yeah, and if we move on to the next song, Running Free, that, again, is a really Paul kind of like poppy, kind of punky vibe, like song that Paul, he nails it. I mean, he nails all these, but this is like a Paul song. This is another Hell's Angels, kind of like
you can almost just sitting here thinking about it. You can almost feel like the battle for the soul of Iron Maiden about what it's going to become right here.
Exactly.
You have these punk, poppy songs that Paul likes that are about Hell's Angels and leather jackets and kind of like Judas Priest like in a way. That kind of fight, and then you have like another side that's what they kind of later become is like the Remember Tomorrow's side and the Phantom of the Opera side and Strange World kind of proggy sound that they would later become. And the album is kind of two-faced in that you have these pop punk songs and then you have these progressive, longer songs that are about a different kind of subject matter, more fantasy or sci-fi or whatever it is going on in Steve's head that he's thinking about that day. It's kind of an interesting juxtaposition between the two.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it should be noted too, just for the record here, that if you're looking at writing credentials for those songs, Prowler was written solely by Steve. Sanctuary has co-writing credits from Paul. Remember Tomorrow has co-writing credits from Paul, and Running Free has co-writing credits from Paul Di'Anno. So
yeah, it's interesting. Like
you wouldn't think it would be Remember Tomorrow.
Yeah,
right?
I don't hear Paul in Remember Tomorrow. That's like a Steve song to me, but maybe he did write some of the lyrics on it.
So, I mean, all in all, great song.
Just get on about Running Free, though. We heard that song live twice, I think, on the... which tour was it that they
Final
played?
Frontier Tour.
Yeah, they played at the end twice. And that's a great closer, just to talk about the song. Is that I really enjoyed it as a closer. Bruce would do a lot of interaction with the crowd, and you do the shouting between each side, like the battle to see who could be louder. And Steve would just be up there running that bass line the whole time.
My thing about that when I recall that too, is when Bruce was introducing the members of the band, and he was like, he's like, over here on the bass guitar, the Red Hand of Death, Mr. Steve Harris, and then Steve would play like the line, and then he would introduce that. It was just cool, like like you said, the interaction was cool.
It was a great closer. No, I don't know if I'd want to see it again or hear it again, but at the time, I thought it was pretty cool. It was a really, really cool closer. I know you really got in the Running Free there for a while. That was like the only thing you listened to.
Yeah, I actually did a guitar cover of it on my Instagram page of it too. I'm going to be honest. I can try to sing like Bruce, and I have a little bit of his, gravitas and his presence, but I can't hit the high notes like he can.
Yeah, you're more of a
my
Paul.
voice is my voice is pretty much like Paul. I mean, I consider emulate him. If I just did earlier, but I'm like you said. I mean, I did a cover sounding like Paul, and it really grew on me, and it kind of it's just a catchy song. It's fun to play. It's fun to listen to. It's fun to jive to or whatever. But
yeah, it's a great song to put in the car and drive. It's one of those. One of those great. Just sing along to it and you're driving. You're just out on the road. You're free. Which I think that's kind of like what Paul just encapsulated that biker mentality of just out on the road.
Yeah, he is kind of like that outlaw mentality, and I think in some of the early days DVDs when they talk about Paul, even one of the guys is like, "Oh, he's like this gruff urchin," and he is like he's not like. Bruce is like this. I mean, let's be honest. Like when you see Bruce on stage, I mean, it's godlike. It's like he's God, right? He's God. And then you got like Paul, and you're like, he's a great singer. He's great, but like you said, his showcase and his charisma is like this hard ass. Like he's an outlaw. Like he's not for anybody. He's not for himself. He's kind of like in the middle. He's just like this guy who wants to live life to the fullest and doesn't give a shit what happens. Where Bruce is like this streamlined, like. Professional. I mean, there's a difference there.
When Bruce goes on stage, he has 100% control of everything that goes on.
Exactly.
And he has as great a stage presence as anybody in the history of rock.
Yeah,
and he's probably one of the best frontmen in the history of rock. Well, obviously, in our opinion, he's the best, but
exactly,
he's up there in anybody's list, I would think. But yeah, like this album with Paul had limitations. Mm-hmm. But Paul also brought a lot to the table, and that's why the album was a huge success, and we're still sitting here talking about it.
Oh, exactly.
40 years later.
Yeah.
And still sitting here being like, this is a great album. Just going down through these songs, it's like hit, another hit. I mean, it's just like great. And obviously it leads into the next song, which...
The biggest hit of them all. Well, not a hit, but I mean, like, it's probably the best song.
It's a song that Bruce said one time on stage that if you don't like this song, you don't like Iron Maiden. And it's true. If you're listening to this podcast and you like Iron Maiden, you like this song.
You like the Phantom of the Opera.
It's personally, it might be my favorite song that Iron Maiden's has. It might be my favorite song of all time. It's something that's such a tour de force of guitar, bass, drums, vocals. It's the complete package. It's the first song that Steve ever wrote that was 100% complete and awesome. It had everything.
Yeah, that's one thing about Maiden that Matt and I discuss all the time. It's what songs have they created that are truly epics. I mean, you can sit there and listen to, I know I tend to jump ahead here and talk about the future, but you can listen to 22 Acacia Avenue, you can listen to Number of the Beast, you can listen to The Trooper, you can listen to 2 Minutes of Midnight, Aces High, Wasted Years, that stuff. Great songs, amazing songs. But in terms of like a legendary epic status, they don't have, like Matt said, all these components of true mastery. I mean, like, everything is so structured in a way that the song just... I think length of song, too, actually matters. Because if you listen, some of these songs are 3 minutes long, 4 minutes long. Phantom of the Opera is the longest song on the album. It's 7 minutes and 8 seconds. So you're talking about a song that's almost twice as long as any other song. That gives you freedom to do more with the song. And I think, like Matt said, they nail it. Everything about the song, from the lyrical standpoint, from the musical standpoint, from everything. It's just the time changes, the drumming, the where there's moments of silence are great, where the melodies change, the harmonies on the guitars, everything. It's just...
Yeah, you said that song's 7 minutes long, but when you're listening to it, it feels like it's like 15 minutes long. There is so much packed into that song. From the opening riff until... Then you get to the lyrics, and then it changes like 2 or 3 times into different melodic sounds. You have guitar solos. I mean, it's pretty much the primer for every epic Maiden song to come after that.
I agree, and I think another thing we talked about, if you guys haven't checked it out yet, look at our first podcast episode about where we kind of introduce ourselves and talk about the podcast and our opinions. We talk about the history of this, and obviously the Phantom of the Opera was a 30s film, a 20s film in the 1920s. It's been remade time and time again. It's been a theatrical thing on Broadway and theaters around the world for, almost 100 years now, if not 100 years. It's a very prominent fixture in literature and in, cinema and entertainment. So for them to write a song about that, that just goes to show you their wisdom and their kind of like prowess as not only musicians, but they know about the world. They know about things in the past. They're just smart people. This song, like you said, this song alone, this is not my favorite song Iron Maiden has ever done, but it's definitely top 3. It's probably number 3 for me, and that's a hard decision. You're talking about like fractions from my number 1 and 2, which I don't want to talk about now. I'll save that for later, but it's my number 3 song of all time from Maiden.
And it's a song we also had the privilege to hear live on the Maiden England tour.
Yeah, it was. Go ahead.
It's transcendent listening to it.
It's your baby. It's your baby.
Yeah, like a tear welling up my eye talking about it. It was amazing. Just to when they get to the part at the end when all the guitarists are playing together, and it's just the diddly 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 diddly. It's amazing. It's perfect. I don't know what else to say. And it's also a song that Paul, one of those songs that Paul can do really well, and this is one that he can't, quite live up to. I think Bruce destroys this song. It's just amazing. It's a song made for Bruce, and he takes it to another level when he sang it live. It's about as close to perfect as you're gonna get on any song.
I agree with you.
I don't know what else. I don't know what other higher praise to give it. It's amazing.
It's deserving. It's well deserving. Like I said, I don't completely agree that it's number 1, but there's no denying that it's not one of the best, if not the best.
It's in the conversation.
Yeah, it's
of anybody that knows anything about Iron Maiden. It's in the conversation. Period.
It's definitely in the conversation, and that kind of. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, we'll just. I could sit here and talk about Phantom of the Opera forever, so we'll move on to Transylvania, which was the first instrumental one of the only instrumentals. I think what they did three instrumentals, 4 if you count the beginning of Murders in the Rue Morgue.
Yeah, 4 instrumentals. I think what they had Transylvania, Ides of March, Genghis Khan, and then Lost for Words. I think that was it.
Yeah, this is I think hands down the best instrumental that Maiden put together. I don't think it's really much of a competition or a conversation.
I agree with you. I think and what I love about this song too is, like you just said about how great Phantom of the Opera is. I think some of the stuff from Phantom of the Opera kind of carries over to Transylvania when you listen to it. You get that same kind of vibe, like the way Steve plays his bass. I don't know this for a fact. I don't know if Steve has ever said this in any interviews or anything, but I think Phantom of the Opera and Transylvania pretty much go hand in hand. I don't know if they were kind of maybe created at the same time and like they
do have a similar vibe to them.
Yeah, and when I listen to them, I mean, I love. And here's another thing about this album that's so great if you're talking about listenability and the way the tracks are stacked together. What I just said there, because I can listen to Phantom of the Opera and just segue right into Transylvania, and it's perfect. And I can listen to it the other way around too. I can listen to Transylvania first and it just segue right into Phantom of the Opera because the song is so, the parallels there between the songs, the way they sound, is just like it's so connected. I mean, so connected in a way that's, I mean, I think they're the most connected songs on the album.
Yeah, Steve had only been writing songs for a few years, and he put together like 2 masterpieces. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing that he'd only been playing bass for a couple years, and he's already pumping out like all-time metal classics that soon. It's really a testament to Steve and what he was able to do and create. Mm-hmm. It's pretty amazing. Transylvania, like you said, great sound. Very similar to Phantom of the Opera in sound, but different enough that each stands on their own right. I think Phantom of the Opera was originally 2 songs that Steve had written, and he put them together. The beginning was one, and then that kind of bass transitioned into his other idea, and then he moved right back, which is, like I said, another testament to Steve and his ability to come out with that kind of musical content. It's amazing.
Mm-hmm. And if we're talking about, again, influences of the songs, Transylvania, obviously, from my standpoint, is about, Count Dracula and vampires.
Yeah, it just conjures up those images when you listen to it. That's another great thing about Iron Maiden is the images it conjures up. It's instantly, you get those pictures in your head. If you close your eyes, you can see it. And it's another, like, skill that Maiden has as a whole, is that ability to draw up those images and symbols in their music.
Okay, what about we're going to move on from Transylvania to Strange World. What do you think about this one, man?
Strange World, like I said, on this album, it had a lot of songs that kind of just stood in their own and they're in their own universe. And this is another one. There's no song that sounds anything like Strange World outside of its own creation. Strange World is very, very unique. And I know when I heard Strange World and think about it, I think of like a original episode of the original Star Trek. Like, that's kind of the images that pop into my head. It's very sci-fi-esque. It's strange. It's a very strange song.
Yeah, no pun intended. Yeah. I agree with you. One of my favorite lines in the song is, there are girls drinking plasma wine. I think that's a really cool kind of like what Matt said. It reminds you of some alien planet, like, akin to Star Trek in a way, where you go to this alien planet and you see these alien creatures or even people who look like women or girls drinking plasma. I mean, that's like a delicacy, and it takes you to this other place. Another thing that I'm going to say about Strange World is the way Paul sings it. Paul is pretty gruff and kind of like has that kind of raspiness on Prowler, Sanctuary, and Running Free, and even on Phantom of the Opera. Strange World, I think, is one of his songs where he actually tries to showcase his more high note talents. I mean, he's really putting a lot of passion into the song when he sings it, and it's a departure from the other songs.
Yeah, from biker Paul.
Yeah, from that raspiness to the more like, I mean, when he's singing like, one of my other favorite lines is when he goes, "This isn't the play," and he just holds that. That part of the song is just, I think he just nails it. And that, in terms of Paul's performances, I think this might be one of my favorite songs that Paul's ever sung for the band, if not my favorite. just because it's not him being raunchy and trying to put on this kind of like biker persona. It's actually him, pouring his soul into the song. That's one thing I like about it a lot.
Yeah, it's another song that in that battle for the soul of the band that goes to the other way of the proggy kind of metal mentality that they would develop later on. It's like you said, Paul's not the biker. He's not biker Paul here. And he actually does a really great job, I think, in Strange World. I can't criticize him for it. It's a great song. He does a great job on it. I personally like that style more in the band than the kind of punky rock stuff that kind of reminds me of like Judas Priest or one of those bands. But I agree with you. Strange World is one of those really great songs on the album.
And for me, coming in with just having said that, I think it might be my number 3. Behind Phantom being number 1 and then Remember Tomorrow being number 2. It's probably my number 3 on the album.
Personally, I'd put Phantom, then Remember Tomorrow, and then Transylvania.
Yeah,
Transylvania is a song in my early days of listening to Maiden that I just really, really loved. Just listening to Phantom of the Opera straight into Transylvania is one of those songs I never skipped. I always, Transylvania come on, listen to the whole thing. It's one of those songs I tried to play on guitar. When I started playing electric guitar, it's one of those, it's just a great, great song. And then Transylvania kind of transitions nicely in the Strange World too, as you were talking about earlier. This is one of those albums that I listen to. I don't skip a song. I just listen to it this whole way through.
Yeah, I'd have to say that I agree with you. I don't skip anything on this album whatsoever. I listen to it all the way through. But that brings us to the next song,
which is probably, I think we'd agree, the weakest. I wouldn't say it's the worst song. I wouldn't use that harsh language, but I'd say weakest at least.
It's the weakest track on the album, in our opinion. Charlotte the Harlot, and this is written by Dave Murray. So,
we didn't really discuss this yet on the podcast, but Dave Murray happens to be my favorite guitarist in the band, one of my favorite guitarists of all time.
And
I will say though, saying that Dave Murray's songwriting abilities are not always the greatest. He's not the best songwriter in the band. He's not the best songwriting guitarist in the band. Probably the third right now, without argument. But this song kind of encapsulates. I guess it. I don't even know how to describe this song in the Iron Maiden catalog. It's one of those standalones again that I've discussed, that like Prowler, where you're talking about a guy streaking, and or you have like Strange World, that's just this weird proggy song. Charlotte the Harlot's another one, like you're talking about a hooker. That's really not what Iron Maiden becomes about at all.
And I think to a certain extent, I agree with you. But here's my take on it. If you're talking about British history, if you're talking about maybe even the Whitechapel murders with Jack the Ripper, and you're talking about harlots, maybe this is a touchstone to that in a way.
I guess I could see it being on Killers, like a song that would be on Killers, and you said Jack the Ripper is just kind of like similar to that kind of sound on Killers, which is, like I said, kind of a battle of the soul of the band. Yeah. Yep, like you got this. We'll see. Killers kind of goes in one direction, not the direction I would have chose to go in, but it's the direction that the band chose to go in with Killers. So we'll discuss next on our next podcast episode. But Charlotte the Harlot,
it's Charlotte the Harlot.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
in its own world, like one of those songs that just kind of is what it is.
Not a bad song by any means at all, but like we talked about, like you just said, the soul of the band, our views of the band and how they are now, based on what we've listened to from their catalog. It's like you said. I mean, it's in its own little strange world. No pun intended from the song here, but I mean, it is.
Now, I'll say it's part of there's a sequel to the song that comes later in the band's history. It's just far less superior than that song.
I agree with you. Yeah, I think the second song in the part of the Charlotte the Harlot saga is far superior. But that brings us to the last song on the album, the title track, the name of the band, the name of the first album, Iron Maiden. For me, I'm a fan of the album version. I like what Paul does with it.
Yeah, it's a song that definitely supports his abilities.
It supports his abilities too. I love the raspiness. I love the way he does this song. That being said, though, Bruce does it better, in my opinion. I think Bruce, it's probably biased, but I just think he does everything better. But I love Paul. I love what Paul does with the song. His performances on stage were great with it when they toured. When he does those screams, though, I mean, when he does those screams, he does channel something that Bruce maybe doesn't have. I mean, I think the rawness that he has on this album in general really hits home with this song, and I think that I mean, it's something special that differentiates Bruce and Paul.
I think it's a song too that the album version doesn't quite live up to the version that you see when it's live. When it's live, it takes it to another level. And we've seen this song live, 6 or 7 times. And every time we see the band, they play it. And it's always different when they play it. There's always some different backing. And it's a song that, I can listen to every time they play. It's just that one of those songs they play live that's just, when you hear it, you go crazy. Eddie's going to come out, or there's going to be some giant Eddie that comes out, or...
Scream for me?
Yeah. I mean, the crowd goes nuts for it. It's not the end of the show. They act like it is. There's an encore, but it's one of those closers that... And then at the end of the song, when they start going crazy, Janik's throwing his guitar in the air, and Dave's like doing his crazy hammer-ons and whammying, and Adrian's still playing normal, but that's what he does, yeah.
Mr. Technical.
Freaking Steve shooting us all with his bass, which is awesome. Nico is doing some crazy-ass drumming. Bruce is screaming. It's one of those great, great live songs. I love it.
I love it, too. I mean, this entire album, like we had discussed earlier, from beginning to end, is completely listenable. It is... I mean... There's no skipping on it. There is no skipping whatsoever.
Yeah, like I said, Charlotte the Harlot's probably the weakest song on it.
And I'd still listen to it.
I will say there is one glaring downside to this album, and it's usually the fault of a lot of bands' first album, is that the production on it is really weak. Mm-hmm. Probably the weakest of any Iron Maiden song, probably because they didn't have any money to pay for good production.
Exactly.
And the guitars on it are weak. The sound is thin. It's one of those songs that you wish that they could have produced better. It's probably a reason why a lot of these songs come across a lot better live, because they're a lot fuller sounding, a lot rawer. They're just better live. But that's a huge issue with this album, is production.
Yeah, I agree with you. And to take note, too, I know this is kind of forward-thinking, but this is the only studio album to feature Dennis Stratton on guitar.
Yeah, we could talk about Dennis's shortcomings as a guitarist. He definitely was not the equal or even on the same level as Dave Murray, or even the level below Dave Murray. He was a fine guitarist, good rock guitarist, not great or good by any means.
Exactly. And I just wanted to bring that up
there's no Adrian on this album.
No Adrian on this album, just for people.
And he's not even the guitarist that Janik would become later.
Exactly, and. This album also has Clive Burr on drums.
Which is a debate in its own
right.
Yeah, go look at a YouTube video on the internet of Nico, and you'll get somebody down in the comment section saying that Clive's better.
And we brought this up last time, too. Clive is on 3 albums. He's on Iron Maiden, he's on Killers, and he's on Number of the Beast. And after that, Nico steps in. So just keep note of that, too. If you're listening to Iron Maiden, you don't know who the drummers are. Clive was around for 3 albums.
And Clive definitely a completely different drummer than Nico.
Very different, and for what it's worth, very skilled at what he did too. I'm not gonna take any points away from the big Clive supporters out there. However, I would say personally, I think Nico's a lot better, but that's just a personal opinion.
Yeah, you could probably do a whole episode on it, just talking about the Clive and Nico debate. But I would say, just talking about what Clive does really well. I'm not a drummer, but just listening to it, Clive, when he was hitting that snare and he had that drive rhythm, like there was nobody better than that kind of forward blast beat sound. I mean, I'm not a drummer, like I said, but he could really produce a good rhythm section for the band.
I agree.
He didn't have a lot of range or scope. You couldn't do the later. I don't see him ever doing, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner. He couldn't do Where Eagles Dare, but what Clive did, he did really well.
I agree. And I think that brings us to the last bit of the album, and that's the artwork. Love it. Love the artwork. I'm not going to say that it's the greatest. If we're talking about the original release, I like the way that looks. It's very cartoony in nature almost. And then the updated version is a little bit more, accented with the lights being, more tuned down. The skin on Eddie's face looks more human as opposed to the skeleton-like one almost in the original album release. And I think that, let's talk about Derek Riggs, the guy who did this. He took, I think, from what I read in the past, there was a Vietnam tank picture from the Vietnam War with a tank with a dead soldier's head on it. And that's where he got the inspiration for the face for Eddie. So that's another historical reference there. Not only does the band have historical, the artist is also very learned and very historical about, the things he portrays. But in the scope of things, I like the cover, but it's not the greatest. It's just Eddie with a t-shirt and there's a brick wall behind him and some red lettering that says Iron Maiden.
But I just want to say, the importance of Eddie to the band, you cannot understate how important Eddie is to the band. He is as close to literally being a member of the band as you can get. Mm-hmm. People, when they saw that album cover, said, "What is this?" Mm-hmm. And that made people buy the albums. And that, from the time Iron Maiden started, that first album, until today, they've always put a lot of effort into producing a great album cover. And it's something that got people listening to the albums, got them noticed. And Eddie's the biggest mascot in rock history. It's hard to understate it, but like you said, this album cover, personally not my favorite, but you can't understate how important it was.
Yeah, I agree with you. There's no understating how important, this first cover is. And I'm kind of looking at it from a perspective because I've been exposed to. We all have been now. Yeah,
just imagine you're in the record store, 1980,
and
you pick up this album, and there's this zombie-like creature on there, and you've never seen anything like that before, and it says Iron Maiden. You're probably like, I want to buy this album and listen to it.
You're right, yeah, and I think another thing about that is what you said there, how that zombie imagery and just the cover itself ties into every single song that they talked about on here, whether that be Remember Tomorrow and the obscurity of it, Strange World and the obscurity of it, the menace behind the story of Phantom of the Opera, the menace and the horror behind Transylvania and vampires, and then to see that, like you said, and then look at the back and see the words Transylvania, Phantom of the Opera, you're thinking like, oh shit, this is awesome,
I want to listen to this album.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to know what this is.
So, I agree. I don't really have, the artwork for the album, the supporting tour was pretty much...
They were a new band. They
were a new band. They really
no
didn't have
money.
Anything. Yeah. So
they would have that mask behind Clive that would drip blood.
The blood would squirt out.
Yeah. That was
Eddie.
As good.
That was Eddie.
Yeah. That was as good as he got back in the days of the original Maiden. That was all the production they had. In their tours that they do, they would just go out there and they just play fast and they'd play loud, and that was their touring back then. It was like that was the support for the album. They got noticed that way with Eddie and their live shows, and people listening to this album just loved it, and that was how they got started. I don't know, the more I talk about this album, the more I like it, the more I'm getting nostalgic thinking about it, the more I just want to listen to it. If you had to rank the album out of 10, just as much as we've been talking about it here, pumping it up, what do you think? If you're taking in listenability, listening to front to back, production, artwork, the importance of it.
I think if you take in, let's say those four domains, those four pieces that make up this album, that's, like you said, the production, the listenability, the artwork, and the importance, the significance. What does the album talk about? What's it discuss? What does it mean, right?
You have to take in some negatives. Yeah. The production's a little bit of a negative. It's awful. Let's be honest, it's awful.
It's a negative for me. The listenability is astounding.
Yeah.
The track listing and the way it's organized, which could potentially be part of the listenability, is astounding. The lyrics, amazing. The musicianship, amazing. Even though the production doesn't really give you the full effect of the musicianship, just the way things are organized and composed is fantastic.
You do see some limitations with the band as they were currently formed, you had Paul,
Yeah.
who did some things really great and did some things not so great. He had some limitations. Dennis Stratton, not the dual guitar attack we'd come later to know. He was not the equal of Dave Murray.
Exactly.
He was not somebody who could go up there and just be on the other side of the stage and really hold his own. But that being said, I don't know. What do you think? What would you give it?
I mean, like you said, those two things, and then we discussed before too with Clive, great drummer with all that stuff, but not Nico for me. I think
that's our personal opinion about Nico. Like I said, there's a whole battle of that, but yeah,
artwork is good. The importance of the artwork and the significance of the artwork is paramount. I mean, that's perfect, but the artwork itself, not the greatest album sleeve they've ever done. So for me, with all those things being said and just summarizing that, I'm giving the album an 8.5 out of 10.
Yeah, number I had in my head was like an 8.
Yeah,
which is in my head good. It's a really good album. It's something that I still listen to this day. I overlook the production of it a lot, or sometimes I listen to the live version of the song, which is different than the album versions, but still, I think it's just a really amazing album.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely one of their best, and that's saying a lot because they've evolved so much, and for that to be an album that came out today's what June 23rd, 2018. You're talking about an album that came out 38 years ago. That's saying something that it holds up, and it's still getting an 8.5 from me and an 8 from Matt. I mean, that's something that's solid.
And like I said, the very first album, how many artists had an original album like that?
Exactly. And there's albums that would come after this, obviously we think are worse than this album, so that's saying a lot. But yeah, if you guys are listening out there, this is just Matt and I's take on the album, what we think of the songs, what we think of, the members of the band and what was going on at the time when they were performing. If you agree with us, cool. If you don't, cool. I mean, we're not going to be, upset or anything. Let us know. Let us know what you think. If you haven't checked out the first episode where we talked about how we got introduced to Maiden and a little bit about Matt and I, what we do musically and what our passions and stuff were in that first episode, we kind of touched on a little bit. Check it out. Listen to this one. Next time we're going to talk about Killers and go through that album and all those songs. But again, hey everybody, thanks for listening to A Matter of Life in Maiden, the podcast of the Beast. And again, I'm Joe Labriola.
I'm Matt Wagner.
And we'll see you guys when we talk about Killers next time. Cheers.